it's frustrating.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't really know how to be enthused about it because it's annoying and frustrating. So as you guys can see, there is no engine inside of my Corvette. It's a long story, lots of frustration and delegation and thinking and going back and forth with the team on what should be done, involving all the sponsors and discussing, since we want this car to be 100% in all aspects, and we've put so much time into this car on everything, the drivetrain, the suspension, the serviceability, the electrical, the body panels, all of that stuff is perfect. You guys know that we had issues on the dyno where the vitals of the car and the engine were perfect. We cross-referenced and checked everything to do with basically the things that you check when an engine is not performing how it should, and it still was not making power. We were adding timing, we were doing everything that was needed to be done for this car to be making about 850 horsepower at the crank. On the dyno, we would expect to see low sevens. And it was just way off. It made 594. So we were going to do track testing day anyways to feel out the chassis, make sure the power steering systems and all the other joining components work well so that we can check those off the list while simultaneously working on how to get power out of the engine.
Okay, so we're taking the drive shaft off. It's got these 14 mil nuts. And then working on getting the transmission disconnected from the car, and then we're almost ready to pull the engine after that. Just got to get all the underneath things unbolted first and then move our way to the top. Smooth sailing.
We went through a lot of things, a lot of scenarios, maybe the cam, maybe the headers. The headers being the common denominator for most people because it is unique and it is new and no one's really dealt with an 8-to-1 header. The theories behind why that might have made the power low is because during the intake stroke we have so much overlap on this cam. But when the intake stroke is happening, the exhaust stroke is overlapping, and actually when the exhaust leaves the chamber, the intake draws in as an eventuary effect and gets you more compression on the combustion stroke. So we thought maybe because the 8-to-1 merges all 8 cylinders, the cam spec may have been determined off of normal headers, and maybe this overlap in the 8-to-1 is causing some issues. It's not a solid theory and no one could have said for sure. So what we are deciding to do is, we had a couple options. Make a set of headers. We were going to do a try-Y setup, build them on the car, or we will pull the engine dyno the engine so that we know the difference between chassis and engine, and we can set aside all of the possible variables that goes with putting an engine in a car, running on a different ECU and all of that. So the engine will probably go in the engine dyno with a very standard setup LS base computer where we will advance the timing until it makes the power, and the AFR and all of the ratios will be perfect on that engine dyno, and we will see if this engine makes what it was built out to be. And then from there we can calculate or see maybe there was an issue within the engine itself and it doesn't make the power on the engine dyno. We can then rule off the header design and the exhaust system being an issue. So we're able to more accurately pinpoint and make sure that we have the engine package that we want. There was one thing about the vitals that we couldn't quite figure out. The EGTs, the exhaust gas temperatures, were running about 200 degrees hotter than my S14, which is not okay. This can point to the engine working harder than it should be during the pulls on the dyno. So we were seeing high 1300s for temperature on the EGTs, whereas my S14 runs in the 1200 range. My S14, for reference, has ran flawlessly for 4 years. The engine was built by FabMac. It makes 665 wheel horsepower on a 440 LSX block, and lots of pretty good components, but nothing like what we were using on the Corvette. So that's why the Corvette should have made that much more power, and it would have had another 1,000 RPM on the top end. So when you talk about 1,000 RPM, you're dealing with the length of the gear, which is probably one of the most important things in drifting, to have a gear that's versatile and has power throughout a large range. So with turbo cars, a lot of guys size their cam and their turbo to effectively give them the longest power band, because you want to be able to utilize the gear that you're driving the track in. You don't want to be shifting all the time. So this engine would have had more power with a longer gear, giving you just that much more of an advantage mechanically, given the build and how light an NA engine can be with no intercooler piping, no supercharger, no nothing. So. With all of that said, this is our due diligence, making sure that we check off everything on our list and making sure that we make this a reliable, I mean, this car is a function over form build, but because of how well you make things function, it just ends up looking good in form. That's generally how these builds and everything should work. If you make something work really well, it's going to look good at the same time. There is a balance, but generally that's how it goes. So that is what this car is basically. In hindsight, you know, pulling this engine gave us some really good tips and tricks on what we will actually change for pulling the engine, because we found all these little snags and all these little things that we didn't really like, or that we want a quick disconnect on this, or that we want to make this easier to pull out. That's interesting in the sense that the time invested in doing this process might save us down the road if we actually have to pull an engine at Formula Drift or something, where the engine was in here and it ran perfectly and we never needed to touch it until we see a problem. We at least now have that checked off the list, where we realized a bunch of issues, not issues, a bunch of snags that would really be detrimental if you were on a time crunch that we're actually going to fix now. And we wrote down a list. We made good time in pulling it. It took like 2 hours, but it could definitely have been way faster if we had done a couple things differently. Going forward with that, we still need to finish the body kit. We still need to take the car to get wrapped over at Lone Star. We're gonna kind of kill two birds with one stone here. The engine already was picked up. Luckily, Vasily was here. He was picking up a custom angle kit that I designed for him. While he was here, we were pulling the engine, so conveniently enough, he's driving it back to Josh at FabMac, saving me a day in time, which is great. That gives us the opportunity to finish up all the little things, because you know how it goes. We are rushing to put the panels on, to then get the car wrapped, to then compete with the car as soon as possible, whereas now we can probably add some quick disconnects on the panels. We can do things a little bit better, a little bit cleaner for that side of the build. So yeah, this can be
quick disconnect needs to be down here.
something great about here.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle?
Just
quick disconnect.
on there. Yeah, anywhere down here should be good. And then this all stays, and you realistically never have to touch this. If you do have to touch this, you got to pull that off. Look how that works.
Oh, that is sick.
You like that?
Yeah.
Now you got that forever. Yeah. You need to pull out a 350. Need a 350 small block out of your car. Bam.
How handy is the shelf of
the amount of time it would take to make that. Oh my god.
infinite parts.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
So header off, tranny off.
Motor stand.
This is episode 28, I think. I know we left you guys on a cliffhanger while I was pushing the car in. All right, let's push it back in. Realistically, we didn't want to take the car to the track with not wanting to risk something. If there's a problem with this engine in the bottom end or in the rotating assembly, and you have a catastrophic failure at idle versus at 7,000, 8,000 RPM, that's the difference between windowing your block, basically punching a hole in the side of the block and destroying absolutely everything. Heads, cam, valves, like you name it, everything that's expensive, ruined. Or pulling it before it's actually destroyed and solving the problems your gut feels like there is. So my gut instinct when it comes to engines has always been, I probably shouldn't run this. This is back in the past, by the way. And you know what always happens? The engine blows. So luckily I haven't done that in a long time. So my gut feeling is telling me this is the right direction, and we will keep you guys informed on if we find something, and I hope we do, because that will reassure everything that we've been doing, that we've made the right call. And we are missing events because of this. We're missing the Gambler on this weekend, and we're also missing the 50K shootout, which I was gonna have both my cars there. S14 was gonna be rented, Corvette was gonna be my competition car, and that would have been a glorious day for everybody, because it would have been the debut at a huge event, watching this car and being able to compete in it. Luckily, when I got to do a couple laps up and down my entryway here, this car feels amazing. This car drives amazing. The clutch, everything that we've built feels fantastic. I did some handbrake pulls. Guys, the handbrake and the inboard brakes works phenomenal. It locked up really easily. So I sized the bore of the calipers according to what I've been running on the S14. 2 fingers. These wheels lock right up. And that's with the brakes mounted to the diff, guys. So really cool stuff that works really well. And once I do a donut and then I hit the throttle and kind of float the car with the wheel, you can already gauge how well the car is going to self-steer, how well it's going to respond. And you can pretty much tell how good a car will work as soon as you pull it into the burnout box or as soon as you do a donut. So this car is going to work extremely well. It will impress, and it will be a functional, high performance, lightweight, very fast and very agile car in drifting. So I wanted to give a thank you to all my sponsors. There is absolutely no way that I could do this build without their help and their support. Starting with some of my longtime sponsors that I've been with for a while, FabMac Industries on building the engine, Nuke Performance on providing all of my fuel solutions, Drift HQ for being a business partner, friend, and sponsor. Always a pleasure to work with you guys. BC Racing for allowing me to make the custom suspension that I want to the exact spec that I need. You guys have been amazing. Kansai for giving me the wheels that I need to drive this car around. Link ECU for giving me the management system and electronics that I need to power this car. McLeod for allowing me to take the engine power and deliver it right to my rear wheels with their clutch setup. Drive Shaft Shop for your axles and your carbon fiber drive shaft. Royal Purple for giving me the confidence in running my engines at the high RPM that I do. K&N for all my filtration needs. This is on my tow rig, my daily driven cars, and my race cars. Vibrant Performance, another proud Canadian company. Thank you for all the fabricating components that I've needed to make this what it is today. DEI for helping me protect all my critical components from heat. D&D for your racing seats, seat belts, steering wheel, and other interior products. Brian over at Capital Auto, thank you for your support on giving us one of the most essential needs in drifting, which is the tires. With all of that said, we can't thank you guys enough for the support and following this build. It has been what has elevated our channel, elevated me as a builder, as a driver, as a business owner, seeing everyone that's following along and taking it all in. Whatever points we are giving you, I know guys are applying what I'm doing to their own builds. And it's really cool to see that the community is evolving with the build as well. And if I ever built another one of these, it will just be that much better because of all the lessons I've learned and experiences I've gained with challenges, basically. Anytime you face a challenge, it's going to progress you. That's going to be it for this video, but we will see you guys on the next episode where we continue to mount the body panels, and that will probably be us getting ready for this car to be wrapped. So that's something really exciting. We have an awesome wrap designed by 144 Print House. Nate Hamilton owns 144, and they do a fantastic job. They did the S14 livery. They did the one on this car as well. And I can't wait to show you guys that. We'll also have an opportunity to mount our Big Country Lab wing, which really, when we were trying to get this car done for a certain event, I don't think we would have had time to do that. So we might be able to get that into the schedule depending on how this engine goes. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. That's it for now.